Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down and back in for a little more Spooktober action. And yes, despite failing yesterday, we have actually gotten caught up, and we are live with the Seaman's Spooktober countdown list. That's right, every day this month I'll be watching a Halloween spooky or scary movie and doing a review. And the goal is to try to get one up every day. We were behind by like 8 days. We got caught up yesterday. And now today, almost caught up yesterday. I fell asleep after watching Halloween and did the review this morning. But it's the 9th. We're on the 9th film. We're officially caught up. So why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in. The Child's Play. That's right, baby. The 1988 version of Child's Play. I have to designate what version of the movies I'm watching at all times now because much like Halloween got a reboot sequel of sorts, Child's Play got an actual remake quite recently. We're not talking about the new one, although I do think that movie did some interesting things to update this story. And because of the choices it made, I think it took a little while for Mark Hamill to really be able to dive into the character because it was AI that was learning. So it doesn't get exactly where you want to get with Hamill. I think he does a fine job. But I wish we could get more because I think where that one left off had some really interesting concepts for an updated version of Child's Play. But when you're looking at the 1988 version of Child's Play, the original, the OG, Tom Holland, not Spider-Man, but writer-director Tom Holland, really came up with an idea that, at least for kids, is absolutely terrifying. The late 80s, early 90s was all about toys and dolls that were realistic. You had a lot of toys that would be able to talk to you. I remember growing up, my little sister wanting a doll that you actually fed food to and then like peed and pooed. I kid you not. These were real things back in the early 90s. So the idea of taking a lifelike doll and making it evil. You want to talk about finding a way to scare a kid. I mean, I don't know I can't remember if the movie was rated R or not. But certainly with language and things, I think it probably was rated R. So certainly not a movie that I was getting to anytime soon as a kid. But I do remember Child's Play being all over the place. I was 2 when it came out, so more of the sequels. I was a little bit older to recognize when like things would pop up on TV. And I honestly thought the movies for years were called Chucky. That's just being a little kid, man. Like you associate... Oh yeah, no, the Chucky movies, man. Chucky 1 and 2 and 3. You grow up and it's like, Child's Play. Missed that as a kid. But the idea, definitely something that felt realistic and scary. And like I said, with the updated version, they kind of approached AI. The idea with the original was having a murderous psychopath named Charles get shot during a robbery gone wrong. On the verge of death, uses a voodoo spell to cast his soul into the doll, which then somehow got repackaged, or maybe just got tossed out in the package into the garbage. Ends up with a homeless guy who sells it to a lady who needs a doll for her kid on his birthday, and she doesn't have the money. She's a single mom, and, he sells a $100 toy for $30, and she takes it. And then the kid ends up with a doll that is actually alive and wants revenge on, his partners and to become a person again. And what's cool here is I actually like the updated version a little bit more on this element of updating or aging up our lead character here, Andy Barclay, who was played by Alex Vincent in the original. I actually kind of like the idea of an older version of Andy being involved in the movie because it allowed for him to do some more things. But even the 6-year-old version of Andy, I think Alex Vincent does a really nice job. I mean, he comes off like a little kid, and it's probably because he is a little kid. But the idea of having a kid just about the same size as the doll is really interesting and fun to play with. And Holland doesn't shy away from playing with that idea. When Chucky makes his first kill, the natural instinct is to point at the kid because there's footprints and flour on like the counter that match up to like the kid's size of his shoe. And that's the whole kind of play with this whole movie, is the fact that this kid can talk to the doll, can see the doll do things, but nobody believes him because he's a little kid. And it's one of those things that also plays into why this murderous doll now, this possessed doll, is going after this little kid. Eventually, Chucky finds out that the only way for him to become human again is he can only transfer his soul to the first human he spoke to or revealed himself to, which happens to be a 6-year-old kid. So, writing-wise, you set up this genius concept of this murderous doll chasing a little kid and actually trying to, not necessarily kill him, but trying to get him the whole movie because he needs him to become human again. So I loved all of those elements, and the slow reveal of Chucky being Chucky is just brilliant in the movie. We talked about how John Carpenter established one of those like super iconic moments in a horror movie when he went POV style to open up Halloween, and Tom Holland certainly was influenced by that by saying, "Hey, let's go POV for the doll," and it's wonderful and creepy all at the same time because you have a camera that's super, super low to the ground, that's giving you the POV of a doll, and then you see it moving like human fast. The doll's got little tiny legs, and you see the camera moving at like human speeds, and that's kind of creepy when it's coming like toward you. So I love taking that element and applying it to Chucky and making that a thing for Chucky, is that we would see the doll's point of view every once in a while, because it is creepy to see a small thing moving. And, the whole slow reveal to Chucky is wonderful. We get those point of view moments. We hear noises or see, don't quite see him, but we can hear that he's doing things in the room. Like turning on a TV, or doing things when the kid's not around that at the beginning are small enough where it's like, oh, you totally believe that the kid did this. He said that Chucky wanted to watch the 9 o'clock news. You put the kid to bed. Next thing you know, Chucky's watching the 9 o'clock news. You blame it on the kid. And you eventually get to a point where the things that Chucky is doing make some of our adults, specifically Andy's mother, Karen, played by Catherine Hicks, and even our police officer, Mike Norris, played by Chris Sarandon. You just get to the point where, eventually the doll has to start doing things that clearly can't be the kid. And watching that slow evolution just physically within the doll is awesome. The longer that Charles Lee Ray is inside the doll, the more human it becomes. So you actually see the doll look exactly like the doll at the beginning of the movie, and it looks that way as you're going. And then slowly, like the first time he finally reveals his face to Andy, I believe, it really kind of starts to take on a more human-y looking version than the classic version of what we've all come to know as Chucky. So I really like those elements of the physical reveal. And when you talk about Charles Lee Ray or Chucky, Brad Dourif, who voices him, is just perfect, dude. He gets a little bit of screen time at the beginning of the movie before he dies, but then his voice just works perfectly for Chucky. It is one of the things that's kind of jarring when you go to the new version of Child's Play, because the voice is a drastically different take, and I obviously appreciate Mark Hamill doing something and making it his own, but that voice is so iconic to that character and so perfect for trying to scare people with a doll. It was something I really, really love from Brad Dourif, and is the best element of this entire series. Much like a lot of the classics, after the first couple, which were pretty legitimate, the movies start to get pretty absurd, but the way in which Brad Dourif voices the doll just makes it worthwhile every time Chucky is on screen. But I love everything that he does with this doll, and I love the story that the doll has. I mean, when you get down to the final showdown, you are seeing some really terrifying visuals. I mean, they spoilers, they melt Chucky's face pretty much off because they lock him inside the fireplace and set him on fire. But like the visual ending to Chucky is just terrifying. And when you look at the rest of the cast, like I said, Alex Vincent, he's a little kid, so you can only do so much with him. But what they ask him to do certainly works. I mean, the movie, I think, still holds up, now. And Vincent's performance is just good enough to make it work with a character that young. And like I said, the size similarities are really what makes that idea interesting. Whereas in the newer one, I really like the updating it to be an older version of Andy, because an older actor could do a little bit more in a movie like this. But Alex Vincent does a wonderful job. Catherine Hicks, who, when I was growing up, was a mom on a show called Seventh Heaven, is a perfect choice for the mom here. She plays it wonderfully. You really feel for her when she can't get, Andy the toy that he wants. And her face when she finally realizes that Andy's not lying. She goes to the box to get ready to throw it out. It's a massive freaking box, right? So she's getting ready to go and she's just kind of lifting it up and looking at something because she's trying to understand what would make her son lie about all this. And a set of batteries falls out. And the look that Catherine Hicks gives the camera is just priceless, man. Pure, oh my God, everything is real. And oh my God, if that's true, this is really terrifying. And it's one of those moments where it's the whole build up to her going to the doll and opening up the back of the doll to see that the batteries aren't in there. And then his head spins around and he does one of the Chucky things and then attacks her. One of the best moments in the movie, and Catherine Hicks just delivers on all of those elements. And then our only really other big-time character is Chris Sarandon's Mike Norris, the detective at work here. And he does a wonderful job, He is the first one to think that it might be the kid. He's completely kind of thrown off when the mom starts buying in and believing what the kid's story is. And then when he finally sees that Chucky is real, it's another great reveal. And that's the other thing, too, that I love about the movie is not just the slow reveal of Chucky, but the slow upgrading of how violent Chucky gets and the types of violence that Chucky's committing by the end of the movie. I mean, the very first death in the movie, albeit is absolutely absurd. Maggie Peterson, one of Karen's friends from work, played by Dinah Manoff, is babysitting when Chucky springs to life on her and hits her in the head with this little pin hammer. And it scares her and knocks her off balance so bad that she goes flying backwards and launches out the 6th-story window, lands on a car. And it'd been a while since I've watched this version, and I was laughing out loud going, oh my gosh, I forgot how ridiculous that moment in the movie is. It's probably the least realistic and most absurd moment of the whole movie because she literally gets hit with this little pin hammer and then proceeds to travel 25 feet and then jump through a window. But Dinah Manoff is really the only other big kind of screen time person in the movie. And she does a wonderful job with it, especially as the first victim and the first reveal to Chucky kind of happens with her. Does a wonderful job, but the upgrading in how he starts to, get a hold of a knife. He has a great scene in the car with, police officer Mike Norris, where he's stabbing through the back of the chair and then up under it. Just all these wonderful moments that every step of murder that Chucky tries to commit upgrades a little bit through the whole movie. And by the time you get to the end of it, you just have a film that for me has just always been part of my classic realm of horror movies. It didn't come out of those early, ones in the late 70s, going into the early 80s, kind of on the back half of the late 80s with that stuff, but immediately injected itself into the conversation as a hardcore classic slasher flick, and one that is a ton of fun. So I really enjoyed Child's Play. As you can tell, because I've been talking for forever. So now I want to know, what's your thought, man? What do you think of the original Child's Play? Where does Chucky fall in your litany of scary movie villains? And were you a kid when Chucky was going on? What did a toy doll being possessed do to you as a young person, if you were like me growing up with Chucky? Any thoughts about that in the movie? Brad Dourif's performance, anything you can think of down below in the comment section. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the Seaman all Spooktober long, then I urge you to show a little love support. If you haven't, jump over there, join the Seamaniacs by hitting that subscribe button, and hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down, I've been the Seaman. I'm signing off. Peace. Well, oh, B, you guys are still here? You must be looking for some more content. Well, don't worry, Seaman's got you covered, man. You got videos like this guy and this guy. And if you haven't yet, and you want to come check out all the Seaman goodies, join the Cinema Sit Down squad, man. Hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell down below that, too, so you can get alerts every time I make new videos.